What's everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Associate Editor of Dragzine, Brian Wagner. And on the other side of the screen this week, we got Rickie Jones. Rickie, what's going on?
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just moving right along here, trying to kick this racing season off a little bit more here in Ohio. Tracks are starting to open up a whole lot more because we're out of freeze mode. But yeah, traveling and going to some races and just doing some race car stuff. How about you guys over there at RJ?
Man, we're staying busy. We are slammed, probably busier than we've ever been. So we're very fortunate.
Yeah, busy's good. And it seems like, this wasn't on the question list, but I did just think of this now you mention it there. We were talking about this in the pre-interview. COVID, the COVID issues, the COVID delays, the COVID part shortages. How are you guys doing with all that? Because I've heard rumblings and rumors about some pipe being hard to get hold of, and that's kind of important for you guys for what you do.
It is. Yeah, there has been tubing shortages and massive price increases on steel, and the market's been pretty crazy, going into this. But we try to plan ahead, so we've placed some big orders, and our tubing rack is full. Plus, we've got some extra sitting on the floor that we've kind of just held on to as we're, because like you said, it's almost like a baker running out of flour. You can't do anything without tubing, being a chassis shop. So we've got a good stock for us to be able to build things with, and but it has been difficult. We've had to plan and adjust and invest in some extra inventory.
Oh no, that totally makes sense. It's like how airlines buy fuel, they hedge it and they buy it in advance, whether it's going to be they think there might be increases or not. And it's better to be prepared than unprepared and totally burnt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for us, I mean, most of the products that we make, at least for the Quartermax brand, it's all made in house, so as far as lead times and shortages, it's kind of nice when you're your own manufacturer and, you've got your own workforce, and as long as we keep the material and we keep our guys working, so far, knock on wood, we've been pretty good with our line of Quartermax stuff. Vendor items, it's been kind of tough to get, and we deal with those and try to get those parts as quick as we can for our customers. And but everybody's kind of in the same boat when it comes to some of those items.
Yeah, it's really kind of crazy right now. You're seeing it seems like daily on Facebook. I see people on my feed asking for shops asking to buy spare parts off of individual racers to finish builds, and I'm like, man, that's when things are getting kind of serious, when shops are struggling to get the basic necessities.
Yeah, like you said, if you got a project right now, all the projects we have going, the best thing you can do is try to plan ahead, try to purchase early, and try to give yourself as much time as you can to get the parts you need for your project. And for those who are in emergency situations, give us a call and we'll try to do the best we can to get you parts as fast as possible. So, and even then too, there's shipping delays a lot of times. I think the whole world is experiencing that, some regions worse than others, but knock on wood, we haven't had too many complaints, and everything's been pretty smooth.
Well, to kind of dig into what we want to talk about here, one of the things I remember is, you spent some time behind the wheel racing some cars. What did you really enjoy about racing, and what was your favorite class to race?
I probably have actually like two favorites, and I can explain why. So my nitrous Pro Mod car, I loved it just basically for the pure speed that it had. They're just so fast. It's like riding a bull, just trying to hang on. Everything's happening so fast. The acceleration, also trying to manage all the power. The Pro Mod's a lot, like, it's very much thrilling, to drive. And then Pro Stock, for me, it was definitely a little bit slower car, but it was very precise, and you're very much more engaged as a driver, having to make all those shift points, drive with a clutch still. So you've still got to, which even back when I raced Pro Mod, it was still clutch. But that was almost 10 years ago. But both of them are just interesting, have their own challenges, but the nitrous car with the flames and stuff coming out at night was really fun. And Pro Stock still, for me personally as a kid, kind of growing up around Pro Stock, and just the sound of 10,500 RPM in your ear as you're banging gears is really cool. It's tough to replace that, but they're both a lot of fun.
I think you touched on the essence of both classes right there. The differences where one is like trying to ride a bull, and then the other one is like trying to be a precision sniper. They're
Yeah,
like the only similarities between those two cars is they have big tires and doors. That's
yeah,
where it ends. And that's why I think it makes it interesting, especially, you have that perspective of driving both, because it's very much, a pro mod, you have to practically expect it's going to do weird stuff. In a pro
yeah.
stock car, like you're not expecting that, and it almost gets you off guard.
Right. Yeah. Driving a Pro Mod, you're right. You're just trying to hang on and be prepared for whatever's going to happen, because you've got to respond quick, So if it goes out there and overpowers and you've got to be ready to step off of it, And but if it's making a great run, it's still just, man, it's fast, And I was 10 years ago, quarter mile, I went over 240, and just the difference from going Pro Stock, which was maybe 210 to 240, it doesn't sound like a lot. It's only 30 mile per hour difference, but man, the car, just the G forces down track, just never quits pulling. And even then, trying to stop the car and the shutdown and all that stuff, everything's just different. Everything's happening faster. The Pro Mod, it's just so fun, just so thrilling, to the speed.
It's always interesting talking to different drivers about what they would drive, what they wouldn't drive. And there's a lot of racers, even nitro guys, that are like, I'm good. I don't want to touch those pro mods. Those things are crazy. And that's coming from a guy or a gal that drives a nitro vehicle. That says a lot about what those cars are capable of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's one of the things that makes Pro Mod so interesting is all the different power combinations too you can run. And every one of them takes a different setup and different tuning methods, and different approach when you go to build the car. There's just so many. I just love learning about it. They're so interesting.
That kind of leads me into my next question, is that, you and your dad both raced, and how has that experience helped you guys when it comes to building and tuning cars? Because I would personally think that gives you just like that extra seventh sense about what a car needs, what it likes, and whatnot, especially driving, especially knowing the differences. So talk about that a little bit, how it's helped you guys.
Yeah, exactly. I think just our experience, so many customers when they come here, some have experience, some don't. So for the ones who have a lot of experience that know exactly what they want, we can work with them and even share our experiences and try to make everything one step better, you know what I mean, than what they've ever had. And then for those who haven't really, they're just getting started or they're new to a certain class, we've got a lot of experience we can draw on and provide information and kind of help them along the way, get started, make good decisions throughout the build. So ultimately, when you're all done with your project and your car and you go out and you're trying to run, that you've got the right equipment, that it's set up properly, and that you're going to enjoy it and have fun. Because, man, racing to me, everybody wants to be competitive. They want to win. That's pure, but still having a car that goes up and down the track and have everything be safe. I mean, that's our priority as a builder. And when you get all done, we want to see you enjoy it. It's a big investment to go racing, and we just want you to enjoy it and have fun. And I think if you do all that, and the wins will come, and the success will come.
Well, it probably makes sense too for, for someone that's buying a car to go with someone that has some of that experience, just for the simple fact that when they get the vehicle, it's going to be already in the ballpark on where it needs to be for their combo and setup and weight balance. Because you'll see this at the track sometimes, and I've seen a lot where people have a brand new car they're trying to shake down, and they're in the weeds, and you could tell they're not having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things that we try to provide with our customers through that experience is that, hey, we've tried a lot of things. We kind of know what works, what doesn't work. We're always evolving also, but that's one of the things when you leave here, that it should be in the ballpark. It should go down the track. Everything we try to finish a car as if it was our own. Um, so we'll go through it and test everything and set it up. And so when we put it in your hands, that basically we've prepared it for ourselves, and then we give it to you. That makes sense. So.
Well, this is something interesting I'm thinking of too as we're talking about this. Is I've talked to other chassis builders, and you see a lot of these cars, and I hate to use the phrase cookie cutter, but I mean basically, they are, when you're churning something out, they're going to be a lot of the same for the most part. You find what works, and then you don't make mass changes to it. Is there something that do you guys have like house cars that you've put out there that are like experimental only, where you tell the person, hey, we're going to try something, let us know how this works? Or do you guys just kind of stick with what you know? How do you approach bringing chassis to another level?
Yeah, throughout racing ourselves for many years, those house cars that you speak of, that was our cars that we built and raced through, Top Sportsman, Pro Stock, Pro Mod, all the, different methods, where we would do a lot of testing and R&D ourselves in-house on our own car, and go and test it and prove it before we'd put it off on the customer. So it's been 35 years of development, and we're still going, through Dad starting out with his high school Camaro that he modified into all the stuff that we do today. It's always been, we try to refine it and make it the best we can for our customers. And then having the opportunity to work with teams like Elite Performance and Eric Enders, and there's a lot of things that we would try on her car first before we would put it into the next car. So there's a lot of cool things I think we have as a chassis shop that maybe some others don't have those opportunities. And from building and testing and tuning, it's really cool to just, I'm more of a kind of a tech and data guy. So I really like to build design a part, build it, and then take it to the racetrack and then see what it does, and see the data that, hey, this worked, it didn't, why, maybe we need to go back, make some changes. So there's always something to learn. That's my favorite part.
No, that totally makes sense, because I was watching some dirt track racing on Flow the other night, and they talked about, like the rocket chassis, the driver, their house car. And it got me thinking, I'm like, how many of these chassis shops have, what you would consider like a house car, where it's like something that, like what you guys used to do, where you race it, where maybe you don't race it anymore. Do you have someone that you basically tell them, hey, we're going to give you some experimental stuff, let's see if it works, kind of deal? And it's interesting just to see how, that thought process on how chassis shops, do more than just, people look at chassis like, oh, it's just a bunch of bars. No, there's a lot of thought that goes into where those bars are placed and why they're placed there.
Yes, absolutely. And each car we do is a little bit different, honestly, based on, wheelbase, or what the rules are, or what the power plant would be, what tire you're using. Is a small tire, is a big tire. I mean, they're all unique. And we just try to refine each application, starting on the chassis jig, all the way through the whole process. So
is that something that excites you when someone brings you like, hey, I want to build this really one-off strange car for X class, this is what I want to do? Is that the kind of stuff that gets your creative juices flowing? You're like, oh, this is going to be fun.
yeah, absolutely. It's cool to sit down and think about, okay, what's the best thing you can do to build, and not just what's the easiest, to build, but what's the best way to build it, and that's a challenge. And a lot of the classes too, where there's weight rules and all that stuff, you have to be conscious throughout the build. So when you're all done, the thing's not real heavy either, but it still has to be strong and durable and do its job and perform and be consistent, handle everything. So there's a lot of kind of thought and engineering that goes into it. Safety wise, also, there's always there's been some new improvements on like the seat pans underneath the drivers. That's going to be coming out for this year. So there's just always something new that's always changing. You're right. Standing back in the staging lanes, you look at it and say, oh, hey, it looks the same as a Pro Mod did 10 years ago. It's the same body, but the stuff underneath definitely evolves.
Well, it's like with our Project Blown Z28 that Skinny Kid built that radial tire car, and talking with him about the thought process on what they did. And a lot of people don't realize that chassis builders just aren't slapping pipe together and putting stuff together. You guys have to look at like the example there with the Zoomies. He's like, I had to plan ahead for these Zoomies, where I wanted to put them, where the firewall was going to be. And then like you said, you have to deal with weight because you can't make it, it can't be too heavy. Well, you also can't make it too light because there's safety regulations on how much weight you can put in a car, where you're going to put the weight in the car. I mean, there's so much more to it. And it's what always makes me cringe when people says, well, I got a buddy that's going to put a chassis or roll cage together. I'm like, oh, how's that really going to end, man? How's that really, really going to end?
Yeah, it's a lot to consider when you're thinking about the whole build. And for home builders too, I mean, not to discourage that at all, but there's a lot to consider. And when you're going to do your build, it's great to kind of have a vision from the start of what you picture the car to be when it's all done. Because I know some builds where you kind of start out and you're kind of unsure of like what you want. You're just going to start on this or that. And then it kind of morphs over time. Well, then it's expensive to go back and redo, So, and specifically like on some of the items, like let's say our threaded adjustable strut mount kit that we sell. You can buy just the simple bracket, fixed strut mounts, and just mount your struts like that. And it's less money, obviously, but then when you're all said and done, you don't have that adjustability, whereas if you were to have that threaded mount, you get all done with the car and you can make your adjustments, and it just kind of opens, so many of these cars, you don't know what you're going to do with it. Sometimes like you may be able to fit into a certain class this year and then another class next year, or you might run a small tire on it this year and then change to a big tire next year, depending on what you want to do. So when you're building the car, it's nice to kind of plan ahead and say, okay, hey, what can I do to build this thing to where, it'll work in some different applications, but also be specific enough to be the best it can be for what your current goal is, So there's a lot of things to consider.
Some good words of advice there. And before we move into our next section, we got to thank our first sponsor of this episode, Performance Distributors. The company allows you to feel the difference, not just ignite a spark. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, Performance Distributors ignition systems are designed and manufactured under the most stringent of guidelines. In fact, the owner, Steve Davis, told us their systems are designed as if they're running them in their own vehicles. Well, because they are. Their line of DUI distributors are the first and one of the best HEI distributors on the market. Their machine-calibrated timing curves provide instant throttle response and eliminate engine-damaging detonation. For those of you with late model vehicles, Performance Distributors Sultan of Spark ignition coils are based on the DUI technology, so they too can accommodate wider plug gaps while you're firing more voltage. So check out performancedistributors.com. And as always, we got to make sure we hit our sponsors up. They're important and whatnot. And kind of shifting gears here a little bit, pun slightly intended, you guys have built a ton of championship winning cars. you use them in your ads, and it's not bragging when you can do it. That's the way I look at it. If you've earned it, you can put it out there. Out of the championships you guys have won and the cars you have built, what are some of the ones that you're most proud of? And, what makes you so proud about, having your build be out there winning a championship?
Man, that's a great question. I'd say probably the most special one to me personally is 2014 would be our first championship with Erica and NHRA Pro Stock. As Dad and I were both crew chiefs on that thing, we tuned, tune the engine, tune the car, tune, everything as a package. Very special to get that first championship. Not just as the car builder, but the crew chief and everything, to watch it basically going from the rack to building the car to putting it together to taking it out and tuning the whole thing. And then for her to wheel it to our championship. And then it came down to the very last round, the very last race. All the pressure and excitement with your first championship, to me is just very special. There's obviously been a lot of great ones as far as the RJ race car brand's concerned. As a kid, I remember, I think probably one of our first championships would have been with Scotty Cannon back in the 90s, NHRA Pro Mod. Going back through some of the years, definitely a lot of Mountain Motor Pro Stock champions, top sportsmen. Probably another big milestone probably would have been Warren Johnson building when Dad built cars for Warren Johnson in the late 90s, winning the first NHRA Pro Stock Championship with Warren was pretty cool. Then obviously Greg Anderson, some of those guys, all the way up to as recent as, the back-to-back really, let's see, back-to-back champions in Pro Stock and Pro Mod right now, currently reigning with Erica and Stevie, both in our cars, which is pretty awesome, because you do see a lot of chassis shops that kind of specialize in just one category. You might see a lot of brand X in Pro Stock, or brand X and just, or brand Y in Pro Mod, but you really don't see, champions from that builder in multiple categories. So for us to be the first chassis shop to really have both Pro Stock and Pro Mod champions in the same year, I think kind of speaks to how versatile we are as a shop and as a builder. So it's pretty cool.
Speaking of versatile, you guys built the Shadow, correct? Or the Shadow 2.0, correct? The gray Camaro?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So you're the only chassis builder that has built a car that has won on radials multiple times and then won the U.S. Nationals in Pro Mod trim as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. With Stevie Fast Car. Yeah. You're right. That car, man, it seems like it wins almost every race it goes to. It's incredible, but it's awesome.
That poor car, if it could tell stories, it's been smashed up, blown up. I think it's been on fire. I mean,
yes.
that should be like if you guys had an RJ race car like Museum Hall of Fame, just put that one in there and pull the wrap off to show off the body, like the battle scars. Because I mean, Stevie and Phil, they are not kind to equipment. They put it through its paces.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for them, it's definitely a tool to win races with. And you're right. It's gone through some ups, some downs. It's definitely got some battle scars, but it's a pretty awesome piece to be able to, like you said, look at it and say, okay, hey, that car won U.S. Nationals, and it's won how many duck races? It's won, and it still keeps going.
Yeah, it's the other thing that was crazy was at Woodstock. He won Woodstock in Radial versus the World, and actually his qualifying times and the times he was running on radials was quicker than some of the pro mods that was there. To me, that was kind of wild too. I'm like, man, he could throw, if he had enough time and to swap setups, they could throw the big tires on it and then go out and possibly win Pro Mod this weekend too.
Yeah, how cool would that be? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, it'd be amazing. But I think that also kind of a lot of people don't realize how different the setups are between the two and what they would have to change to make that happen.
Oh yeah, yeah, drastically different. And hats off to Stevie and Phil for being able to tune that thing and make it run as well as they do. It's one thing to have great products, but it's another thing to have customers that make it shine too. So they've done an excellent job.
That makes me think of another question. Maybe you could shed some light on. You know, there you see a lot of eighth mile racing organizations, PDRA, Northeastern Pro Mods,
Yeah,
Midwest,
Midwest. Yeah,
NMCA and stuff like that, and then NHRA's quarter mile. And you see a lot of people go, "Oh, well, why don't you just go NHRA quarter mile racing?" It's not just a simple fact of putting a splash of gas in it and going. There's a lot of changes you have to make to a pro mod to make it go from eighth mile trim to quarter mile trim, right? Let alone the safety requirements, which might be different.
yeah. The safety requirements to go quarter mile for NHRA. They've got their own set of safety rules that's got to be, added to, the carbon fiber interior tunnel, fireproof front ends, just some other like RF safety shutoff devices, things like that that are all required for the quarter mile safety, which is all, I think, good ideas, especially when you're going that fast. Eighth mile, I think, is more popular. It's a little more cost effective, but definitely to go from eighth to quarter, you've got gear ratio changes. You've got, all kinds of things that would have to change to basically optimize the whole thing as a package for that amount of feet, so
Optimize and to keep it alive, because
yes.
that last 600 feet, or so, anybody will tell you that behind the wheel of any vehicle going from eighth mile to quarter mile, it gets weird because you're stretching a car's legs a little bit farther, and you're at term like eighth mile, you're going 200. And then if you think about it, some of these pro mods are picking up 50 to 60 mile an hour on the back half, which is just
A lot.
unless you've done it, you do not understand the difference in what that's like and what happens.
Yeah, in the driver's seat, it is incredible. Like I said, even just 30 mile per hour different was huge, going from 210 to 240. Some of these cars going over 260. There's a lot going on, and everything from even trying to get the thing stopped. It takes different parachutes. There's just a whole lot of things to consider when you make that transition.
Yeah, that's the when we did the tech inspection show and talking to chassis builders about safety and whatnot, and we talked about chute mounting and stuff like that, and people don't realize where you mount chutes and how you mount stuff makes a huge difference in trying to stop any of these vehicles, because they've got to get out of that they got to get into clean air to make them blossom. And when you're going that fast, time is of the essence.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You can't wait an extra second for the chute to deploy and open. You've got to get it as efficient as possible. And if you get only one chute that opens, it's late. The second one's late. It can cause an issue. Although it's, ideally you'd like to, like Warren Johnson used to always get in trouble for not pulling his parachutes. With NHRA, when he started going over 200, there'd be runs where he just still wouldn't pull the parachutes. And I think at the time he was testing carbon fiber brakes and all that stuff. And he told him, "Hey, look, last time I checked, brakes is my primary stopping device. Parachutes are just secondary." He said, he said he would purposely go test the car, and during test sessions, he would learn to stop the car with the brakes with no chutes on a quarter mile run. Obviously that's going 200, not 260. But still, and you don't want to go practice that by any means, but definitely, having parachutes that work, having them that they open, having everything done properly, from packing them to mounting them to choosing the right chute for the car. All that stuff is critical. So you don't put yourself in a situation to where, okay, hey, I can't get this thing stopped, so.
Yeah, that I think there's a lot of drivers out there that don't prepare for the what if scenarios when bad stuff happens because
Yeah,
they don't know how to deal with a hung throttle, chutes not opening, what happens. As much as you don't want to think about it, you at least have to have something in your mind, and that way when something does happen, at least you're going to do something that might or might not be the best, but just do something.
right. It's almost like having a fire emergency plan for your home. Like, hey, how to get out of your home and where you're going to meet as a family. If something happens, what you're going to take with you, stuff like that, right? You kind of want to have that emergency plan of action for yourself as a driver inside your race car. So when I drove, you're exactly right. I'd spent a lot of time on the couch thinking about running different scenarios through my head. Okay, hey, the car just shook the tires. Hey, I need to step off. Or, hey, it's getting loose down track. What's my first instinct? Lift and hit the chutes as quick as possible to try to straighten yourself out. Hey, the chutes, like you said, the throttle hung open. What do? You reach up and hit the kill switch, pull the chutes. You just run yourself through all those different scenarios that you can and just practice it over and over in your head if you can and prepare for it. So like you said, you hopefully never have to deal with that situation, but at least if you're better to be prepared as much as possible. So
Speaking of preparing, pro stock cars, they're technological wonders. They are just these precision machines that are amazing, but they're very sensitive to changes, like any precision weapon would be. How do you approach tuning a pro stock car? Because it's like, to me, it's in the same realm as F1, is you can't go through and make wholesale changes with this. You have to treat one of these cars with kid gloves, right?
yeah, it's definitely, you approach it with that same mindset that they are very sensitive. And the reason why is, the engines themselves are very sensitive to load. They're 500 cubic inches, but they don't really have a lot of torque compared to a Pro Mod. So in order to get these things to accelerate, you've really got to throw a lot of gear ratio at them. And yeah, we've got a decent sized tire, but it's not a small tire. But still, I feel like we're always pushing the envelope of what we can do to accelerate it. I think I have the Pro Stock 60-foot record currently at like 952 or something like that at an NHRA national event with Jag's car. And to get it to do that, it's very explosive. I mean, Pro Mods go 950s and as low as down in the 8s, but for a naturally aspirated car to go 950,
That's moving.
It's moving when you really stop and think about it. So, and there's a lot that goes into that, from the shocks, Formula One style shocks, literally, as you mentioned, Formula One, gear ratios. We're still running clutches in those cars, so the clutch package is very sensitive. The suspension is very sensitive. Everything is sensitive. Even one set of tires to another exact same part number tire, but you may have 6 sets of tires that you keep for each car, and each set has its own little bit of characteristic that's a little different. And you change those or run those at certain times for different track temperatures or situations. So I mean, it's very, very much like you said, it's setting up a sniper rifle essentially to try to hit a perfect shot every time. And that's the challenge. You're calculating essentially for the wind and the grain of the bullets and all the stuff that you would have if you were a sniper rifle sniper shooter. That you got to plan for all those things for pro stock car. And it's all about the small things. It's all about the details, from the engine tune-up all the way through the whole thing, driving, the crew preparing it identically each time. So as a tuner, like if you got a clutch guy that, let's say he cuts the clutch disc at a different speed this lap versus, the last lap, or if the clutch disc is not exactly flat, it'll throw your whole package off. I mean, it's all, very, you watch those teams and from a spectator point of view, you might sit in the stands and look at them and say, hey, they all run within a few hundredths of each other. They all look pretty straight and smooth.
It's not an
But
accident.
really, I think, yeah, it's not an accident. But I think, as you've seen, as the whole class has gotten so much better too. There's been a lot of the racers out there, they all have kind of the same technology now. Everybody's kind of caught up with each other, and you're basically seeing a really, really great group of racers that are all competing at a high level. And it's incredible to watch what they do and be a part of it.
And I think for those who are more of the, I guess you would say the astute or educated spectator that really like understands, like you said, these cars, how sensitive, and like the load sensitivity of these engines is just so, it's so hard to quantify unless you really are messing with it, and like how they have like that certain level that they have to be at, and then you have to make sure the clutch matches that and everything else matches. Because if one of those, like I guess another way to look at it is like if you're on a construction project and you're trying to put a bridge together in a couple like sections, and the more you're off on one end, the further you get close together, everything's not going to join together. And you have to have it set up where when you put all these things together, they have to be precisely in line to get that, perfect run.
Yeah, to get the perfect run. Yeah, because otherwise, I mean, don't get me wrong, it'll still go on the track, but you'll come back disappointed because, you're 100th and half or something like that slow because you missed it. You missed it and you missed it by 100th. That's the margin error that those cars have, So
Yeah.
it's
It's amazing, and let alone what then you mix in the human part of it, what a driver has to do inside the car, and they have to be precise with what they do, and cutting the light and doing the burnout right. I mean, I've really like started to pay more and more attention to that, and like how the pro stock stuff works, especially since the NHRA made all the changes to try to bring more health to the class, and it makes sense of what they've done, and it just from a technology standpoint, outside of Comp Eliminator, I think these cars are some of the most like sensitive vehicles there are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a small block would be even more sensitive, because it's even less torque. So it's harder to get the car moving, right? But yeah, they're definitely sensitive. Like if you don't have enough gear ratio, or let's say you leave 100 RPM too low on the launch, or you miss it by a gram of clutch, it's, you just come back and you feel like, you just missed it, and it's so easy to miss it. You've got the variable of the tracks changing, which, NHRA does a great job at prepping the tracks, but there's still, every venue you go to, the track's a little different just because of the surface itself, the track surface, concrete's different. The way that the, running behind the top fuel cars, if you're running behind top fuel, the track is different than running behind Pro Mod versus running behind sportsman class. So even though the track temp might be the same, and it's still the same, NHRA crew prepping it, just your run order will change the setup on the car. And also within the pro stock session, if you're the first or second car out on the pro stock session, the track won't hold as much power as it will if you're like the fifth pair back or the eighth pair back. And you've got to be ready for that when you leave the pit area. You've got to know what class you're running behind, what pair are you, because these cars are so much on the edge. You've got to be set up for it. So, and it takes a lot of planning and a lot of accuracy and execution from the whole team.
That makes me think of another thing, being prepared, the run order and stuff like that at Woostock. I snapped a couple of pictures of this. Like Ricky Smith was at the ready line in his pro mod. And like I saw him get up, I'm thinking, all right, he's going to get ready. We're going to be running a second. Ricky pulls out the laptop after, going up and looking at the track, and comes back and he's sitting there banging on the keys trying to make like last second adjustments, while the dude in the blower car is getting ready and going through. So the Rickie's just squinting, looking at it, making adjustments, and then goes out, sets low ET. So it's really, it comes down to like those moments of preparation in a door car, whether it is a pro mod or a pro stocker, that's going to separate whether that car makes a successful run or it kicks the tires or does something weird.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of it comes down to, when you're tuning, what's the track at this moment right now when you get ready to pull up there. There's a lot of things you can do back at the pit area. I think a lot of racers get caught up at what the car did on their last run. They come back, and a lot of us have that fault. We'll download the run, we'll spend all of our energy studying what's on our screen and making changes for what's on our screen. And a lot of guys forget about, okay, going back up there, what's the track going to be like? So you've got to always account and adjust for that track. And then that gets into the whole topic of reading the track, being able to actually go up there and look at it and say, okay, and quantify that into something that you can tune on the car. So it might be the same track temp, but it might be a little bit thicker, or it might have a little bit more glue or less glue. Might be getting bald now by, might be a 1 or 2 foot bald spot where last time it was covered up. And that's just little details that can make a good racer a great racer when it comes to tuning.
Typically when I'm helping out with a car, like, you see a lot of guys that just look at, like the few feet of the starting line. I go out and I'll walk out past 60 feet if I have the ability to, just to see what's going on a little bit further out, because depending on the car and the application, there's different ways you're bringing the power in. So that's going to, you got to kind of almost play the game. Well, we can get the car out of the bald spot here, but then, at so many feet, it's going to be a problem here. And it becomes a game. And that's why it's funny when the announcers are like, oh, well, they're putting them really, out of the typical groove. Well, probably because they saw something at the 60-foot mark and they knew, hey, we have to get through this transition. And sometimes you just got to go up there and be like, well, do I want to be shot or stabbed? Today, getting stabbed doesn't sound nearly as bad. So we're just going to put it right here and let it roll.
Yeah. And there's a lot of gut instinct decisions that come with experience. A lot of it's just trial and error and learning. And that's honestly one of the coolest things to me about racing, is whether it's the racetrack, whether it's the race car itself, or there's just always something to learn. And there's always a way to do better than what you did last time.
I love different people's like track reading techniques, because you get the guys that'll go up and see what it's pulling, how many feet. I'm more of I use my foot kind of guy to see, what it's doing. Is it sticky? Is it gooey? You get the guys that like they pet the track. I don't know what they're trying to figure out, by petting and touching the track, but we've all got different things that we're looking for and how you got to read the track. And it all, again, it's drag racing is the ultimate execution of taking a simple process and making it as complex as possible.
Right. We're all guilty of that.
Yeah. Like when it comes down to it, you're trying to go fast in a straight line, but we put so many additional variables into it that it's like, man, we're making this hard on ourselves.
Yeah. We turn it into a science project, don't we?
Yeah. Science project. That's exactly what, when people ask me about drag racing, I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a science project on what you're trying to, the physics behind it, the meteorological end of it, what this engine's doing. I mean, I wish it, sometimes you almost wish it was like a junior dragster where it's, you just kind of get it in a spot and let it roll.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's why so many guys get addicted to the racing, is because it's always an ongoing, there's always something to learn. It's always a project, right? There's always whether it's something on the build, whether it's something learning how to run the car, there's always something that makes it interesting, right? Whereas if it was easy and simple, it's almost like a kid you play a game, once you win the last level and you beat the game, I'm tired of playing that game. You want to play something different, whereas with racing, I feel like if you are willing to push yourself and put in the effort, and pay attention to some of the details, I think you'll always find that there's something to learn and something to do better. And I think to me, that's been like the most satisfying um, or fun part of it, is learning about all that stuff.
Well, Rickie, before we pull this thing into high gear, we got to thank our other episode sponsor, Procharger. For
Yeah.
25 years, Procharger has been the industry leader in aftermarket supercharger manufacturer by designing, engineering, and building the most powerful, reliable, and advanced centrifugal superchargers on the market. No matter if you are looking for a 3,500 horsepower record-setting Pro Mod or a DIY system for your street, car, truck, or even motorcycle, Procharger has the perfect supercharging system for you. For more information on the amazing ways you can bolt 40, 50, 60, or even 100% more horsepower to your ride, make sure you visit procharger.com for more details. Fun stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing of Procharger, and you look at the different power adders and everything else out there. When you start playing with power adders, that completely changes the game on how they act, because a centrifugal blower like a Procharger acts differently than a screw blower, than a nitrous car, than a turbo car. And looking at that, you tune a lot of different cars in various classes. Which is your favorite to tune, and why do you like to tune it?
Geez. Currently, I've been enjoying some no prep tuning. Has been fun because it's just the challenge of, like you said, the racetrack. Everything we just talked about, the racetrack that I already know is out the window. So for me, it's like a fresh start of, okay, how do you get a Pro Mod down a street or a back road,
literally,
or even a racetrack that's got no prep on it. So you've got all the same challenges as a Pro Mod and Pro Stock. It's the things I've already been through, except you're just dealing with no grip, and which makes all the racetrack challenges exponentially harder to figure out. And so that's currently probably my favorite.
Makes sense. And it's interesting to see like how no prep has progressed, even in my time in the industry, really paying attention to it. Where before it was the ultimate form of outlaw racing. If you weren't no prep racing, people were looking at you like you were crazy. And it was guys that just were street racers wanting to do it on a track, yada, yada, yada. And now it's the level where they're bringing someone like you in to help them figure out how to get down a track. And I think that speaks volumes to how difficult and how competitive it's really become.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many guys that have put a lot of effort into it, and they've got sometimes the same amount or more money wrapped into their car they're going to take down a back road as what they do in a car that's going to win the U.S. Nationals this year. It's there's a lot of effort and time being spent to optimize that form of racing, and it's really progressed quickly. So I think there's just a lot of advancements that's going to be made on the no prep scene. And personally, I've been helping Robin Roberts for the last couple of years.
Good dude.
Yeah, super nice guys. And to wrap up the end of last year, I think we won the last 4 out of 5 races we went to at the end of last year. Just some, kind of all across the country, which was so interesting because it's the same car, but you're going to different venues. And it's just night and day difference, the setup that we have to run from track to track. So, and that keeps you on your toes.
If you're going to go to any no prep race to be boots on the ground, I highly suggest that you go to Outlaw Armageddon. That race is just that's on my bucket list of when I say you got to go to big events, I say it all the time on the show. Outlaw Armageddon, the U.S. Nationals, the World Cup, any Ducks race, anything that Tyler puts on. There's certain events that you have to go to check out. And Outlaw Armageddon is it's a straight throwback to the I'm not going to say the heyday, but back when you would see tracks packed to the max because people love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's just awesome.
And no prep fans are the most passionate drag racing fans out there. They will cheer and scream for their dude. They either love or hate the TV. They call them the TV guys. And when the TV guy's racing a non-TV guy, it's a completely like, it's the kind of stuff I wish that there was that much like passion in NHRA racing right now. That would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of that has to go back to like personalities, right? Is, as a fan, I think anybody who watches a sport, you're not necessarily cheering, like if you're watching baseball, you're not cheering for the bat to hit the ball. You're cheering for the player to hit the ball, right? You've got your favorite player. And I think for NHRA, a lot of it's been promoting the cars, not so much the individuals, and telling the backstories and getting for people to get to know people's stories. And I think that's something that you guys at Dragzine do a good job of, telling some of these stories. And a lot of the other, there's so many fascinating types of people and backgrounds and stories of, all the stuff that's going on at the track. The difference is that there's not 10 players on the field to tell a story about. There's literally 800 stories to tell about in a weekend. So it's sometimes more difficult to get to know everybody. But I feel like when you do, then you start to get a little bit of, hey, I'm cheering for this guy, or I'm cheering for that guy, or this person. I think that's something that the NHRA might be missing some, and I know that they're probably aware of it, trying to make adjustments. But
one of the coolest things, with flow racing stepping in more into drag racing that I tell people about is if you watch, they're big in like huge in the dirt track world, and they would follow like a few drivers for Indiana Sprint Car Week. And I told them, when in the drag racing world, you have a pit full of personalities. You need to go through and follow some of these guys for a weekend. And they did it one of Duck's races. They followed Roger Holder. And, you got to see what it's like to race from the racer's point of view. And they talked to the crew and what was going on. And, you got a little bit of his story and what was up. And I think that doing that across the board is going to help drag racing so much, because there's a lot of characters out there, and
yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's your local bracket racing track. There are characters out there that, people have cool stories that, it draws in the hardcore fan as well as the, I'll call it the casual fan that, might not know an alternator from a turbocharger, but hey, this person's got a cool story. Let's hear what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is for those stories to get out there, for our sport,
Now, I always like to start kind of digging around a little bit more and asking fun questions of my guests. And,
yeah.
Which do you enjoy more? Have you enjoyed more, racing, tuning, or building?
Oh man, I don't know. Because to me, I look at it all as like a package. Like you can't do one without the other almost, Gosh, I don't know. I really loved all aspects of it. Not to give you a boring answer, but I don't know. I feel like just whatever moment I'm in, I'm always giving it 1,000% my best. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. And I love the challenge within all three. So it's building the cars, we've already talked about some of that, tuning the cars. We've talked about some of the track, conditions that you have to figure out, and then driving them, it takes that discipline too, to stay focused and get the reaction time and handle the cars. and then there's no better feeling, honestly, than being in the seat and seeing the wind light come on. Like when I won my race, I've only won one Wally as a driver, and that was the World Finals in Pomona in Pro Stock, and that was my first Wally. And to experience, I mean, that day probably ranks number one all time of me being at the racetrack. Just my dad being there. I don't know. I just had all the nerves, all the preparation, everything I had dreamed of since I was a kid, and have that opportunity right in front of you. And man, to just go out and execute. It was so fun. In the moment, I think we're all so focused on doing your job and trying to be perfect and not make any mistakes. And then just seeing that last wind light come on in the final round just makes it like, I don't know, I got hit with all the emotion and teared up a lot. And it's just real special as being the last race of the year. And going into next season, I knew I didn't have any funding. So it'd probably be my last, could be one of my last races as a driver. And that was honestly the last time I've been in a car, was back then. So it was a pretty cool way to kind of end my driving career for now anyway. So.
All right. That gives me another idea for a question.
Okay.
Totally off the cuff here. A lot of people don't realize this, but here on the Dragzine Podcast, we have a magical checkbook with unlimited funds, and it's like a wish giving book. So I'm going to open up our magical checkbook, and I'm going to present you with the question: if you were able to build, tune, and race any car, what would you build, tune, and race? This is for you. This is a passion pet project, unlimited funds, unlimited labor. It's just like, here you go, build what you want. What are you going to build and race, Rickie?
Oh, geez. I don't know.
That dream build, that dream idea. I'm always thinking of stupid stuff like this driving because I'm obsessed with cars, and it's like I look at something like, man, that make be a cool race car, and what would I build? What's that fantasy build that you'd want to do?
Well, I love 69 Camaros. There's a lot of late model Camaros, but to me, like, if you've ever been to like a Good Guys show and you walk around and there's like a million classic cars and you can see every car there is, for me, I just love 69 Camaros. So it'd be a 69 Camaro for sure. Honestly, it's probably my dad's car, probably my dad's car, Orange Crush. Just like that, just something that we can go have fun with the family. Something that you just have fun with, I would have that. And then, like, to me, I have that desire to like race with my family and my kids, junior dragster, get them involved, which my daughter, Ava, she's 3, and my son, Ryan, he's 1.5. So, I'm looking forward to hopefully getting them involved here in the next few years, and just basically having fun with my family racing. That'd be probably the ultimate thing. And then professionally, I've had a lot of success in Pro Stock. Dad and I, as crew chiefs with Erica, we've won 4 championships in Pro Stock. I feel like if I had unlimited funding and all that I would build a Pro Mod car, and I'd probably go out there and just try to compete with, Pro Mod, because I feel like there's so much to learn about those, and unlimited power and all that. Ask me which power adder. I guess it depends on what day of the week.
Yeah. What are the rules favoring this week?
Yeah. I don't really know. I kind of, turbos look a little complicated to me. I had a nitrous car once already, so I think I'd be willing to try something new. So I think I'd probably be into some sort of a blower, or maybe even Procharger. So,
to me, the most gnarly, like the for me, pro mod is all about cars that are like audaciously rowdy. So it would have to be a screw blower for me, because screw blowers are just so loud and so angry. To me, that's where the move would be.
Yeah. Okay. I could see that. Like, we built a car for Jason Scruggs a few years ago, and hanging out with him, watching those things run 340s with a screw. Um, they are very powerful. And I like that idea too, that, hey, you've got unlimited power almost, and you could smoke the tires anytime you want. So as a chassis guy, I think I would like that. That way I could basically work on the car 1,000% to try to get as much traction out of it as I could, and to run as much power as I could.
It's funny. Every other power adder is trying to find a way to punch the car in the mouth and get it off the line.
Yeah.
Screw blowers are like, we got to calm this thing down, because it's like a puppy on caffeine. It's just wanting to jump out of its skin, and you've got to like try to knock just enough out of it where it's like not gonna like totally be fat and die, but enough where you're not going to overpower the track. And
Yeah.
there's something cool about with a screw blown car at the line, giving it a couple whaps to get it to that optimal temperature. They're not doing that to sound cool, although it does. They're trying to get it to that that operating temperature they want it at. It's just, to me, those are like the just that angry bad guy. They're the John Wick of power adders to me.
John. Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah, they're definitely tough. It's, man, I don't know.
You're going to be thinking about this the rest of the day, aren't you?
Yeah. I don't know. May have to go tell the guys to get started on something when I figure it out. I don't know. But I'll let you try to fish the sponsorship for me. What do you think?
Hey, you know what? I think we could sell the hell out of it. The pitch is, you walk into the place, wherever you're trying to get sponsorship from, and you say, listen, I've got a really bad idea that's going to be a lot of fun and cost some money. Let's do it. And then that way you figure out which place is really going to be on board and be all about it.
That's fine.
Maybe that's why I don't have any big, huge corporate sponsors, but hey, I'm still having fun, right?
Right. Man, as long as you're having fun, that's what every day should be about. So,
well, speaking of fun, Ricky, we've had a lot of fun on the show this week, and we're coming to a close. And I like to give my guests their opportunity to pull out the old school John Force and thank all of their sponsors and everybody else. So I'll turn the floor over to you so you can thank who you need to thank and tell people where they can learn about more what you got going on.
Okay, sure. Yeah, really, I just thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure as always. And really just say thank you to all of the staff here and customers that we have at RJ Race Cars and Quartermax Chassis and Racing Components. So we manufacture our whole line of chassis parts in-house, all made in USA right out here by our guys. You can find all of that at quartermax.com, and we're also a distributor for over 100 other top brands. We offer price match guarantee, free shipping over $99. So pretty much anything you guys need to build or maintain a car, we should be able to help you with. We've tried to pride ourselves on the best customer service possible, the best quality that we can for the racers. And so then also probably need to thank my parents, my dad, Rick, who started the company, my mom, Bonnie, who's always been with us by his side and works here, and my wife, Sarah, who's been here for 5 years now. And so her and I are kind of the next generation trying to help the company grow, and really just say thank you to all the racers and everybody for their time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I got to thank our sponsors, of course, AFR, Performance Distributors, and Procharger. Once again, Ricky, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I look forward to see you at the track this year.
Awesome. Thanks, man.